Below that 5000 mark, this is a buttery smooth engine, one that you really want to work with, one that you really want to engage with your throttle, with your clutch, with the gear changes. Now let's talk about the engine, which is the same TR series single cylinder 400cc liquid cooled engine that you find in the Speed 400. The calibration is also the same, which means that you have a lot of torque low down, and that is something that you need, especially if you're going off-road. When you are crawling and when you are saddling, you would want fine throttle control. You don't want the bike to jerk a whole lot, and this does comply with your input. Even if you're in first or second gear, as long as the speed is correct, I was easily able to manage the throttle and not unsettle the bike too much, whether I want to slow down a little or accelerate out of a tight spot. So that way the engine does comply and does help the bike take on the tough terrains. And I initially had a little bit of doubt whether the same state of tune of the engine would work with the Scrambler, but surprisingly, in whatever little soft roading that we did, it does work really well. One thing that Triumph has changed is the engine braking provided by this motorcycle to comply a little more, especially when you are, like I said, on trails. Then you would not always want to rely on brakes completely. You use engine braking to slow yourself down, and at that time this bike, again, in a very steady and in a very nice manner, comes to a slower speed or comes to a complete halt. Out on the road, this bike again has about 39 horsepower, 37.5 Newton meters, which is enough to do highway speeds, which is enough to get it up to speeds really quickly. Because of the additional weight and a bigger front tire, the dynamics have changed a little, which means that while the Speed 400 feels very comfortable to reach the 120 kmph mark, this one will go up to 100, and then the climb becomes a little bit slower as compared to the Speed. But in normal riding, you will not find this bike lacking in terms of power and pace. The front tire, yes, because it's bigger, you do have to work the handlebar a little bit more compared to the Speed, but it's not something that will change your buying decision. I think it's not as drastic. We've been through some really tight and twisty roads while climbing up this mountain, and the bike has been pretty fantastic, and it did take very tight lines, changed directions very easily. So that way it's really good, and I don't think you will find that this bike is cumbersome to ride. Yes, the Speed still has a little bit of an edge when compared to this bike in terms of being nimble. Now what Triumph has done is, while you have the same suspension setup, you have a longer travel, which means that when you're going on trails, you have a little more to play with. And I must say that the suspension is a highlight on this motorcycle. Not only does it work really well on trails and on bad roads, it also works really well on roads. Why do I say that? Well, because you do feel the undulations, but not in a bad way. You feel as if you're getting good feedback from the road, while the ride is actually relatively comfortable. If you're going at high speeds, I'm sure you must have also encountered when you're going maybe on a highway or on a flyover, and then suddenly there is this small patch, a small pothole which comes out of nowhere, and it completely unsettles the bike. Well, not so with the Scrambler. This one goes over those sudden surprising potholes with ease without unsettling the bike. So that way it feels a lot more safe, it feels a lot more confident, and like I said, that feedback that you get from the suspension of the road is absolutely amazing. The brake setup has also changed slightly, so you have a radial caliper at the front and a slightly bigger 320mm disc brake, and you can switch off the ABS for the rear tire, which is great. And I did enjoy a lot when I switched off the traction control, switched off the rear ABS, helped me slide the bike and have some proper scram fun that you would want on a bike like this. The front brake is a little more progressive than the Speed 400, which is good, but out on the road, it does feel like it takes a little bit longer to come to a halt or to stop. The Speed 400 had sharper brakes. This one is a bit more gradual, but once again, completely capable of bringing this bike to a halt. Now, the second thing that I wanted Triumph to make better on the Scrambler was the vibrations that you get. In the Speed 400, the moment you go past 5000 RPM, you would notice a lot of vibrations. And sadly, that is the case here as well. They have done some tuning to weigh the handlebar a little differently, add these rubber foot pegs, but it still does not make an appreciable difference. I think it is slightly different. You do get vibration in different parts at different speeds. So for example, I noticed as you're climbing up speeds, you will get a lot of vibrations through your seats, but once you're sitting at about 6,000 RPM, the vibrations move down to the foot pegs. So that vibration issue is still there, is still something that Triumph has to work on. But the saving grace, once again, is the fact that below 5,000 RPM also you have enough torque, enough speed that you can ride this motorcycle on almost all occasions and not encounter those vibrations. Below that 5,000 mark, this is a buttery smooth engine, one that you really want to work with, one that you really want to engage with your throttle, with your clutch, with the gear changes, and that way it is a very tactile motorcycle, which I really appreciate.